to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giant football? If so, sit back and relax. Except you, that person driving. Sit up and keep your eyes on the road. Your ears, though, can still listen as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Fellow goofballs, Two Giant Goofballs, and New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
And me, and Rob. Let's talk about some Hall of Famers, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And that was HOA fees.
Did you say not the HOA fees?
Yeah, the HOF fees.
Oh, no, not the HOA fees. We don't want to talk about those. I had one HOA, never again. Never again. I think that's most of us. I think it's a common response. One HOA in your life. You learn your lesson, you move on. Now I join the HOA that's called property taxes.
Pretty much.
Similar thing, there's a little less rules. Instead of having the nosy neighbor, it's the nosy code enforcement people, you know.
Yeah, you have to mow your own lawn and pay for the trash.
I don't do
that.
Well,
depends on the municipality.
I admit it freely. My yard's like a jungle. It's really bad. It really is.
You got chickens, get a cow. You're right.
Let's let them loose. Exactly. Let them loose. Let the chickens roam free like the pterodactyls they were meant to become. We're going in reverse evolution here.
They're the closest relative to Tyrannosaurus Rex that still live today.
And the raptor. Don't forget the raptor.
Oh yeah. Well, that's more of an eagle. Hence why bird of prey is called a raptor.
There you go. All right. Anyway, off to the sidetrack here. So the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame announced their list of semi-finalists here. And we have quite a few former New York Giants on the list here. We got 7 in total. That's a pretty impressive number, I think, overall.
Especially for the lackluster of, inductees we've had recently that should be in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And some of the ones that should be in there are on this list. It's a very nice thing to finally see, some of these names, with a little bit of hope that the long wait is finally over there.
Recognition.
Yeah, we talked about it before. I think the Hall of Fame hates the Giants. I don't know why. I just do. I feel like there's so many players that should have been on there a long time ago. Jimmy Patton, classic example, 5-time Pro Bowler from the safety position, and I'm not even Pro Bowler, first team All Pro, I should say, 5-time first team All Pro, and doesn't get into the Hall of Fame. Like, that's insanity, absolutely insanity. So,
how in the hell?
There's plenty of people without his resume in the Hall right now. Anyway, let's get started on the people that hopefully will get into the Hall of Fame this time. Very first one we have here to go over is the one that if he doesn't get in, I don't know about you, Rob, but I will be throwing a hissy fit. Oh, a hissy fit. I will be acting like a pouty 7-year-old if this guy does not get in the Hall of Fame. And that is one Tom Coughlin, one of only 14 coaches in NFL history to win multiple Super Bowls. That alone should get him in. If you want to know more on his accomplishments, feel free to go back to our episode. We talked about the best head football coaches that the New York Giants ever had, because he's on the list, very, very high up. And we talked about it. We were kind of torn between him and Parcells to a certain degree, because they both had similar success, even though Parcells gets a lot of the credit because he turned around a franchise that was bad for a couple of decades. But, it's not like the Giants were doing great in the Dave Brown years and all that prior to Coughlin coming around. Now, of the 14 coaches that have ever won multiple Super Bowls, 9 of them are in the Hall of Fame. Now, on paper, that doesn't seem like a very high percentage. But then you look at the fact that Bill Belichick and Andy Reid, as you just said, active, not eligible yet to go into the Hall of Fame. I think it's pretty safe to say that Bill Belichick and Andy Reid will get into the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Just a matter of time.
Exactly. Matter of whatever time that the hoodie and the walrus decide to give it up. It's going to happen eventually.
I am the hoodie. I am the hoodie.
walrus. So, of the other two coaches that are not in the Hall of Fame, one is Mike Shanahan, who, you know, you could easily sit there and say, John Elway. I'm just saying, you can say that, and we're going to talk about that again in a minute here as well. It's going to be a kind of a theme today. The most times we probably ever talk about John Elway, our New York Giants podcast. But yeah, I mean, his record, if you look at him outside of Denver, wasn't that great necessarily. You know, his record outside of Denver was he had 24-40 record with Washington and an 8-12 record with the Raiders. So, yeah, his Denver years were very good. That was just about it. I do still think he deserves to get in the Hall of Fame, though. I'll you know,
I would argue that.
Be devil's advocate and say, hey, this is why probably. But devil's advocate on the other side has to also say the guy got 2 rings still. The guy got John Elway over the hump when John Elway couldn't get over the hump. How many years? With somebody we're going to talk about it next, actually. So, like I said, I think he should be. The other one is George Seifert, who took over for Bill Walsh, and people just kind of gave him the credit to Bill Walsh for all the extra work that George Seifert put into it. But I mean, you got a guy that won I think the last ring the Niners got was what, 95, 94? It was right around the time the Cowboys got their last ring. That's why people keep talking about it. As we say,
it's in the same ballpark.
Yeah. So you're talking, he won one like years after he took over. He was the head coach from 89 to 96. And they won the Super Bowl in 94. So you're still talking, you know, what, 5-6 years after Bill Walsh retired? Is it still Bill Walsh's Super Bowl ring? At what point do we give George some credit there?
Yeah,
so he probably should be in as well. But those two are the other ones that are not in besides Tom Coughlin. I think it's pretty safe to say that Coughlin will get in. Maybe not this year, but he'll get in overall.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt in my mind.
Because he had the success in Jacksonville, and I think that really helps his case. Because, you know, the other thing with George Seifert is he didn't have success anywhere but the Niners. He didn't do very well when he was at Carolina. In fact, he's the only coach in Carolina Panthers history to not have at least one season over 500, except for Matt Rule. So him and Matt Rule, that's not very good company.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think to me, if you win multiple Super Bowls, you got to be in the Hall of Fame. That should be a rule. You're a head coach. And
you're definitely on the topic, and you should probably be nominated for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you should be in.
At least the nominee.
Next up would win an award for losing the most Super Bowls. It's the truth.
Yeah.
So, not to speak ill of the dead here, Mr. Dan Reeves, who I have a lot of respect for as a coach overall, because he went into a really bad situation with the Giants when he was the Giants head coach. Let's be honest. He went into
that's about to say.
Bad situation. Then he suffered through Dave Brown years.
He started off like his first year, he won 11 games. Then he won 9 games. And then, 5?
Yeah. But he went and had some really, really good years, though, with the Denver Broncos. And if you're going to put him in the Hall of Fame, it's going to be because of what he did in Denver, point blank. Because in Denver, he was 110-73. He was a 3-time AFC champion. He went to 3 Super Bowls in a span of 4 years, from between 86, because that's a Giants one, to 89. So 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. They were almost like a poor man's version of the Buffalo Bills.
Almost, yeah. That's funny.
One more. I mean, you never hear about it. You never hear the talk about it.
No, but I mean, also to give to his legacy, most of it's going to go to the Broncos, but he was also a 2-time AP NFL Coach of the Year in 93 and 98.
Yep.
What was it in 93 when he had 11 wins with the Giants? When it was 98 when he had 14 wins with Atlanta? Other than those 2 years, he didn't really play that well with those guys.
Doing the dirty bird. Doing the dirty bird.
14 wins.
That's cool. Jamal Anderson do the dirty bird always. I mean, and that's the thing. So we took the Falcons to the Super Bowl as well. So you're talking 4 Super Bowl appearances, all of them losses. And that's what's going to really haunt him. And I think why he's probably never going to get in is because of the fact that he's known as the guy who just couldn't win the Super Bowl.
Sadly.
And if you look at his record overall, he had a losing record with the Giants. He had a losing record with the Falcons. Same as Mike Shanahan. The only place you can sit there and say he was a consistent, winning coach was Denver. You mentioned the 14-2 season that he had. So that's a 12-game. That's a 12-game jump he had right there over 500, and it ended up being 49-59-1.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Imagine how bad his record would be if you take that 1 year out.
Yeah, I think because we played there. Played? He was the head coach there. 4 years? I think, right? And then
7 years.
5, maybe 7. It was 7 years.
Yeah, 12 with the Broncos, 7 with the Falcons, and 4 with us.
Yeah, and he only hit double digits with Atlanta twice. With wins, once. It was just the once. It was 14 wins.
So he was. Here's a good one for you. So if you go from 1992, which was his last year in Denver, to 2003, he was the head coach every single year in that span. Okay, so you're talking a span of, was that like 12 seasons there?
Yeah,
he had 2 double-digit wins at that time period. 2. That's it. So, like I said, he had some really good years where he got the 4 Super Bowls. You can't take that away from him. That still means something. If that's the case, then Marv Levy sucks too. I mean, like I said, you can't take that away from him as a head coach. You can't. But in the end, he's still the guy who couldn't finish the big game. He's still the guy who ended up with a record of only 30 games, not even 30 actually, 25 games over 500 when he coached for 23 years.
Yeah.
So 1 game over 500, not Hall of Fame caliber. Like I said, the Hall of Very Good, we talked about that before. The Hall of Very Good, He should be there. He's the guy that you should remember when you talk about football between the 80s and the 90s, But he's not a guy that goes in the Hall of Fame to me. I think he makes it short.
Yeah, just like the next guy.
All right, next up, we have a guy who was a flash in the pan as a New York Giant, Mr. Marty Schottenheimer, former defensive coordinator for the Giants. Of course, going into the Hall of Fame potentially for being a defensive coordinator. No kidding. That 1 year defensive coordinator, that's what made him famous. No, I mean,
no. I also his 2 years as a linebacker coach. Hey, you're in that role.
Hey, I know. No one cares about that job.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a guy who literally coached from 1980 to 2006 in the NFL. I mean, talking a long career. This is a guy who had a coaching tree. It included Bill Cowher, Tony Dungy, Herm Edwards, Mike McCarthy, Hugh Jackson. People want to forget him, obviously. Bruce Arians. I mean, you're talking like it's a pretty impressive coaching tree, especially when you start talking about the fact that those guys now bring into it guys, like Dom Capers, Mike Tomlin, guys like that, Leslie Frazier. I mean, this guy's had quite the nice coaching tree overall. And you look at his career overall, it's just like playoffs after playoffs after playoffs. I mean, a record of 200 wins, 126 losses, and 1 tie. Made the postseason in 13 of 21 seasons as a head coach. That's 2/3 of his career he made the postseason. And you can sit there and say, oh, well, it sounds like he coached some pretty good teams. He coached the Browns.
Yeah, what was it, 1-2 years? I mean, mostly he was at KC and then jumped around. But
I always remember him as KC. I always do, and I
remember that. And he took over in San Diego at the time.
San Diego. He also had the 1 year in Washington.
Yeah, I remember that because they gave up. Because who was a head coach for San Diego before him? That was the same way. Couldn't see the deal.
No. This was reverse. So they let him go because he couldn't seal the deal, and they hired Norv Turner.
Yes,
But Norv Turner was going to be the better coach. They were foolishly, shown that they err of their ways. And he was even a coach. Not that this counts necessarily for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he was a coach in the UFL as well in 2011 for the Virginia Destroyers that won the championship. So he finally won the championship there, at least. By beating Jim Fossil, another former Giant there, actually in that game. He was the head coach of the Las Vegas Locomotives that year. Got a giant on giant bowl there. But I mean, if you look at what he did, 44-27 as the Browns head coach, went to the postseason 4 out of 5 years. That's pretty damn impressive. That's pretty big. Including he went to 2 AFC championship games in those 5 years. Then he goes to the Chiefs, and like I said, people of our generation, that's how we remember him as, in that red getup with that hat, with the librarian glasses, like he's going to yell at you. And in those years, he was 101-58, coached them from 89 to 98, and only missed the playoffs 3 times. And the only year that was really bad was the last year he played. Last year he coached them, and he was 7-9. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's not exactly a 7-9, great year, but it's not like
that's your worst.
4-12 or something crazy like that, And then he goes to Washington, only coaches there 1 year in 2001, and is 8-8 in his first year there before getting fired for. I've heard multiple different reasons why he's got fired there, but I mean,
probably because the owner at the time is stupid.
Well, what it boils down to is the owners wanted to get Steve Spurrier. They thought Steve Spurrier was the answer, and they were pretty quickly.
We say that way.
Yeah. So, but again, had success there. Then goes to San Diego. Coaches San Diego for a couple of years that weren't that good, 8-8 in a 4-12 season. Then they go ahead and get Drew Brees up and going finally in 2004, which is Rivers' rookie year. They're 12-4. They let Brees go. They get Rivers in there full time. They go 9-7, 14-2, and then they cut him because he can't get over the hump. And then he never got a job.
Not like there was a trend going up or anything.
Yeah, I mean, like this guy can coach. This guy is one of the more underrated coaches in NFL history, and I think it's because he doesn't have that one ring. But this guy has gone to 1, 2, 3, 4 teams as a head coach. 3 of those teams have horrendous histories. Let's be honest, horrendous histories. The Browns. Yeah, unless you want to go back to the 1960s, they've been horrible ever since.
Pretty much.
Washington, been a joke since the Dan Snyder era started. Luckily, it's finally over, at least for them. Chargers. The Chargers were so bad, Eli didn't want to go there. So, in the end, like I said, to me, I don't think he'll get in. I think he should get in. I don't think he will, though, but I think he should.
Yeah, maybe not this year.
He's already, like I said, he's already deceased, so it's not like we're worrying about him going back into coaching.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, it's like just do it already. If you're gonna do it, do it. I just don't think they're going to. I always felt like Marty was one of those underappreciated coaches, even when he was coaching. It's just, it's. Again, it's one of those things that you can look back at that career and go, he succeeded a lot of places that people couldn't succeed. He made every team every team he went to got better. Consistent success at multiple places means it's not a fluke. You're doing it right. Yeah. So, like I said, Marty Schottenheimer should be in. It'd be a very nice moment for his family as well, obviously. But again, I don't think he will get in. All right, next up, we have one of the greatest all-time Giants ever, at least the face of the franchise in the 1950s there, Charlie Connerly.
And the face of Marlboro Reds.
Oh, yes, the face of Marlboro Reds back then. 9 out of 10.
What was after?
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about him, and we talked about the greatest quarterbacks in Giants history. He played from 1948 to 1961, two-time Pro Bowler, one-time NFL champ, and the 1959 NEA MVP. You know, again, it's hard for me to judge a player that I didn't have the chance to see. And I think this is part of what it comes down to, because like you look at the guy's stats, it's like, oh, he had 2,000 passing yards. But like nowadays you'd be losing your starting job. Back then you were going to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it was like everyone watched our history. The best of it was the 50s and the 60s. It was a different age of football, and you get away with that. And like these guys
throwing touchdowns and go into a sock hop.
Yeah, pretty much. And then right after Marble Reds.
Let's go to the hop.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, Drew. Like I definitely see this guy getting in. Maybe not this year, but I mean, the Giants are probably 42 for this guy. Yeah.
I don't honestly. I think he's one of those guys that the team he played for holds him in very high regard, as they should. I'm not trying to take respect away from the guy, but like when we did our list of top quarterbacks, he barely made the list.
But he was also the face.
He was
face for a long time.
I'm not trying to not give him props, but like
between throwing the football.
But like Phil Simms, for example. Phil Simms is in the Hall of Fame. He's a revered Giant. He's a respected Giant. He's a guy that Giant fans will forever hold in positive light. It's not a disrespect to say you're not there. He's just not there, in my opinion. 2 Pro Bowls. The guy split time at quarterback. He wasn't even the only starting quarterback in the team. Technically, they go back and forth. I can't see it. I understand. And as I said, he's an all-time great Giant. He deserves the Ring of Honor. He deserves the number retired. He was the face of the franchise. Like I said, just to me, just not there.
Well, shall see.
We shall see. Oh, our first one we disagree on, though. Ooh. All right, next up. Rob's favorite player. Otis Anderson. Should we tell the Otis Anderson story for the third time? No, we're not going to do that. Yeah. Don't you worry. We're going to. Oh, the viewership just dropped. Hold on, guys. We're not telling the story. We're not doing it again. Yeah. Don't worry.
We're not telling the story.
So again, if you want to know more about Otis, go back to the greatest, running backs of all time for the New York Giants. We had that episode. That's in, if you're on YouTube, it's in the history folder, as we call it. But you look at the guy there's only 31 running backs in the entire league history that went over 10,000 career yards. He's one of them. Now, when I looked at the numbers initially, in my mind, I was going, okay, 10,000 yards. That's like an automatic in, isn't it? And then I said to myself, how many running backs are in the Hall of Fame currently? 25. That means there's 6 running backs over 10,000 yards that are not in the Hall of Fame currently. Now, there's a couple guys that are still not eligible, like Adrian Peterson is a classic example. Frank Gore is a classic example. But it's not like the NFL is not pumping out 10,000 rushers like crazy. It's not like it is for the receivers, where that's a number that doesn't have the same meaning it used to have. In fact, if anything, with today's game, getting 10,000 yards is even harder. You could argue very easily and potentially be right. So
yeah, even though they play more games, it's just different ball game.
I look at the dominance factor, because that's part of it with me. Is if you're going to be a Hall of Famer, you need to be a dominant player. You need to be a guy that he was one of the best to ever play this game. That's what the Hall of Fame is all about.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for injuries that zapped him of somewhat made him special, I think he's right there. I really do. But I don't know if I can sit there and say he is there based on what we got and what I know that the NFL has done before, as far as their requirements. So his first 6 seasons, which were before the injuries really started hitting him,
yes, but they dominant.
St. Louis Cardinals. Yes, it wasn't just a baseball team back then. I wonder how confusing it was being St. Louis. Do you watch that Cardinals game last night? Which one?
Which one?
Which Cardinals? Gotta get your birds together.
Probably out the ball half the Cardinals.
By the way, have you heard?
First word.
I did that at work today, so I looked like I was an idiot, and I was. It's okay. Anyway, in those first 6 years, he had 7,364 yards. That's pretty goddamn impressive. That is like ridiculously impressive. But then, like I said, the injuries, that's why he became available, keep in mind, is because the Cardinals thought he was washed up and done. Point blank.
Yeah.
That's why he was a Giant to begin with, is because they thought he was done. They thought that he was not going to be that same player ever again. And
how wrong they were.
You know, you can
I shouldn't say that like that. But he wasn't washed up.
It wasn't washed up, but he wasn't as special as he used to be. I'm going to word it that way because I don't want to be disrespectful.
That's fair.
You know, because in the end, he still was a great player. But if you go to that time period that we just talked about, 79 to 84, he had the second most rushing yards in the entire league in that span. Number one was Walter Payton. Sweetness is the only one to beat him. He beat out Earl Campbell. He beat out Tony Dorsett. He beat out all the big names of that time period. Now, Earl Campbell and him was a matter of 50 yards difference, and he played in 2 more games. So, I mean, you can sit there and argue semantics as far as that all you want. But that's how good a player he was. But then you look at the fact that he played into 1992, played 15 years altogether as a running back. Which is, first off, can we say that's impressive right there? Because how many running backs make it 15 years in the league? Maybe he wasn't washed up, guys.
Yeah.
You know,
still got a little gas in the tank left.
There's 7 years to go. But here's why I'm saying that. So his 8 years as a I almost want to say a Ram because I saw St. Louis on the board. As a Cardinal, his 8 years, he had 7,999 yards. His 7 years as a New York Giant, he had 2,274 yards. Only 1 year difference, and like a third of the yards.
Production.
Yeah, I mean, definitely wasn't the same player. So when I look at things like, okay, for his career, he had 10,273 yards. 15 years. That doesn't make it look as good. And again, I don't want to be disrespectful because this is still an all-time great player. I'm just a little particular on what I think is Hall of Fame quality, if that makes sense. You know, who I think is an actual Hall of Famer like that. Because I look at that and I go, okay, that's 685 yards a season. That's not that high.
Yeah, I mean, if he cut out after he won that, if he cut out after he won out that one Super Bowl, but we would have a different conversation how much production he had.
Yeah.
It's like after that, like, you know, he fell off the bandwagon. When you get 400 yards, 300 yards, you know.
He fell off the wagon. That, though. I mean, if you really want to say it there, I mean, at that point, he
did. But I'm just saying, when you take a few more years, because, you know, you're talking slicing off, yeah, what, 5 years off his playing time?
If he had done that for 8 years, I think he'd be a Hall of Famer more than doing what he did for 15. And that's, again, somebody who actually, you know, looks at the accomplishment of the time span may look at this differently than I do. But I look at it from the perspective of, okay, he had from 1985 to 1992. It's a pretty good chunk of years there. He had only one season over 800 yards and only 2 seasons over 700. You know, that's not Hall of Fame. Like I said, I don't be rude about it because I have a lot of respect for Otis. He is still an all-time great, but I still think he goes in that Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame. He's where he should be, the Ring of Honor, all that kind of stuff for the Giants. He's just not.
I understand he wins the Super Bowl. He has a great 7 years with the Cardinals. He comes to us. He has a few more years that are, decent, not great. Gets right about that 10,000 yards and rides off in the sunset instead of just wasting his time later in his career.
I don't think you go.
It would have looked better.
I don't think you go. The 13-year career. I mean, I'm looking at it from this perspective too. You can sit there and say that made his average go to 841 yards per season, but that's still also not really like amazing Hall of Fame numbers. Like I said, he wasn't the same after the injuries, and I'm not trying to be like I said. He can't control it. There's plenty of players like that have issues with injuries overall. To me, when I look at his career, I look at it as a Hall of Fame career in the beginning that unfortunately injuries zapped him of the Hall of Fame ending.
Yeah. I mean, you also think about it too. He split the back too. It wasn't like he was a dominant guy. He split the back for most of the time with the Giants.
I accept. I'm not taking that away from him. But when you have one season where you had 6 yards, you have one season with 200 yards, another season with 200 yards, the season with 140 yards.
That's what I'm trying to say. There's a couple of those ones that just destroyed his average.
But what I'm saying is you can split the back and say, okay, well, he did 700 yards because he had split the carries. But he got 200 yards?
Yeah. At that point, he was the third string.
That's not splitting the carries. That's not anymore. Dave Meggett was the third string quarterback, the third string running back, not him. He was still second string. Like I said,
I know.
Just like I said, I don't want to be disrespectful about it because I like Otis a lot, but he's not Hall of Fame. He's not there. And like I said, I'm glad the Giants have kept him in the revered spot he is. I'm glad that he's in the Ring of Honor. He deserves that stuff, but not the Hall of Fame.
Very good.
Plus, if he went to the Hall of Fame, he'd be a Cardinal anyway. So,
yeah.
Next up is a guy that we talked about a couple times in the show because I met him obviously at the Jacksonville game. Mr. Carl Banks, one of the voices of the New York Football Giants there. And I'm going to give you one accolade that he had, and that's it, because that's all I think you need to have to understand Carl Banks. 1980s NFL All-Decade Team. Done. That's the only case you have to make for this man to be in the Hall of Fame. And I think the problem with him is he's one of those players that the stats don't tell the story.
Correct.
The stats don't tell the story. Watch the tape. The tape tells the story. The tape says Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame even said it when they put him as part of the 1980s All-Decade Team. To me, if you make an All-Decade Team, you should automatically be in the Hall of Fame because that means you were one of the best of your generation.
Pretty much. And then some. Like when you talk about like your generation, but you're also talking about like your multiple generation of NFL players because your average career is 3 to 4 years if you're lucky.
Well, I mean, the guys who get into that kind of team don't have a 3 or 4 year career.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying, but you see a lot of guys that go by that,
And I think what he's done post playing career should also matter. And what I mean by that is, besides the fact that he's got his G3 clothing line at that point, that it wasn't a thing you did back then. Like you didn't get a professional athlete having clothing lines and stuff back in the 80s and all. Carl Banks was doing that. He's like, and this is probably the only time I'll ever make this analogy because I don't want to be, crazy talking right now because MJ is the GOAT of basketball, point blank. But MJ was the guy who made sneakers popular. Carl Banks was the first guy to go, okay, I can have my own lineup of clothing as a football player. That wasn't done back then. He did that. That should matter. He changed the culture of what it means to be an athlete in the NFL. On top of that, you got the fact that he did, he's been the voice of the New York Giants now for how many years?
forever.
His overall football contributions make it where he should be in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, the one stat I needed to give you was the only one I needed to give you. I meant that when I said it. That's the only one. But he's been the voice of the Giants since 2007. He was also, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, because it wouldn't be the first time I'm wrong. He also he did a lot of the, probably not did a lot of the preseason games even way before that.
Yeah,
Like, I remember him as a kid always being one of the guys that did the preseason games as well. So I mean, again,
working his way up.
He's been forever as a football guy overall, and there's something to be said about that as far as getting him in the Hall of Fame. But again, I'll still rest on my laurels of 1980s NFL All-Decade team.
That's it. We could have stopped it right there. We didn't even talk for another 5 minutes after that. Just
we had to. We had to put filler space in.
Yeah. Mic drop.
Boop. All right, guys. We got one more. Oh, we didn't give a response. Carl should be in the Hall of Fame. Won't get in the Hall of Fame. My personal opinion. He won't get in. It's just if I had to put money on it, but he should be in.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if he gets in. I mean, I think it's a flip of a coin.
I wish I had the optimism. All righty. We got one more player who we really haven't talked much on this show ever about. So for some people who might be a little younger, it might be kind of an introduction to who he is. Everson Walls, who was in the 80s one of the best corners, was a long-time Dallas Cowboy. We're not going to hold that against him, though. We're not going to hold it against him. He was a 3-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler. Led the Cowboys in interceptions a record 5 times. Was a 3-time leader in interceptions for the entire NFL.
I was going to say for the league.
The only other person who did that is Ed Reed. That's the kind of class we're talking about. Ed Reed is. And listen, I'll say it, and I'll give my opinion on Ed Reed. He's overrated. I've said it forever. He's a center field guy, didn't help up on the run and stuff like that. I still think he's overrated. But many people within NFL circles talk about him as the best safety of his generation. And he's the only other guy to do what Ed Reed did. Here he is. Now, when he was a New York Giant, he did switch over to safety. He was one of the starting safeties for the 1990 Super Bowl team. He was known to be a guy because of his veteran presence to be calling a lot of the plays. So he was very involved on the field, not just in his own positioning, but positioning overall of the defense. And this is a guy that, again, I don't think he would go in as a Giant per se.
No, he'd definitely go in as Dallas.
He would definitely be a Dallas Cowboy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be impartial. We always try to be impartial. Screw you, Cowboys. We're trying to be impartial. We're trying to be impartial here.
You only got 1 pick six. All right, how about the Apples?
Yeah, but yeah, he did. He had 1 touchdown his entire career. But I think Everson gets in. Just a vibe I have. I think he's going to get in.
Well,
I think it's long overdue for him to get in.
I think he gets in, and just like we were talking about before with Banks off the field, like he also, had a pretty, impressive career. I shouldn't say career, but a personal life outside. So a lot of people, I don't know if he, that too. But I was going to say something that's not a job for him. It was just his donation, if you will. He gave Kenny over to a former teammate, Ron Sprain, when he played with the Cowboys. Ron Sprain, sadly passed 5 years after. But
he had a spare kidney and wrote a book on it afterwards. I'm just saying.
He did. He made a career off that.
He's an author. Another thing the other thing he's also known for is, for anybody who knows The Catch. And that was the 1981 NFC Championship game. Dwight Clark in the end zone. Guess who was covering Dwight Clark? Yeah. So he's probably already actually in the Hall of Fame, a picture of him. I would assume there's a picture of The Catch in the Hall of Fame. But Everson Walls, like I said, I do think he should
That's the
get
pitcher
in,
he wants.
and I do think he will get in. I think it's overdue. He should already been in, point blank. So
Yeah.
So real quick, guys, before we go as well, we of course have to give you guys the update on the latest edition of the Saquon Barkley saga, and the latest edition is all about the fact that the rumor is.
Rumor has it.
I was waiting for you. I paused you. I think that the money with Barkley, the guaranteed money, we've talked about it before being the stumbling point. I think we pretty much had that confirmed today. So they're saying that the guaranteed money the Giants have offered him is like $19 million.
Who said that, and what time span was that? Was it over 3 years?
Well, it doesn't matter. Guaranteed money is guaranteed money.
I get that, but I'm saying, like, if you're guaranteed 19 for 2 years, it doesn't sound as bad when you're getting, 9.5 a year.
He can get more money by being tagged twice. It
Exactly.
doesn't make any benefit for him. So this is according to the New York Post, by the way. So he get $22.5 million over 2 years for getting tagged, and they want to give him $19.5 million in guarantees. Like I said, there's for some reason a weird, like, we're gonna go after Saquon, we're gonna make him seem money hungry and greedy kind of thing going on here. And I think it's the Giants propelling it. And I don't blame them. That's their business to try to make themselves seem like they're doing right.
Both sides want to be the right side.
But I mean, this is the Post Ryan Dunleavy, by the way, reporting this. So he's been pretty spot on for the most part. So yeah, I mean, you're talking a difference of a couple $1 million. Joe Shane, just get it done. Just get it done.
Yeah.
Don't go crazy. Don't overpay the guy. Don't give him any guaranteed money, really. I would say in the third year, if you can go ahead and do it, I'd like that. But if you have to give him a little in the third year, even, I have no problem with it as long as it's not a crazy amount. But you got to give this guy his due, and you got to help get everything right so we can keep building what we had last year. Deb says, how reliable is Pat Leonard for information? To be honest, the big thing of Pat Leonard is he really does know his stuff, is the scary part. But he's just a very disliked man. He's kind of got a little bit of an attitude problem, is I think the biggest issue people have. But like, he called Kadarius Toney being traded way before Kadarius Toney was traded. Remember, he said it, and everybody's like, "Oh, this guy's an idiot. Doesn't know football at all. Doesn't know what's going on with the New York Giants." A couple months later, maybe he knew. So he's not bad for info.
Yeah, wasn't he the one that brought up, like, he had no idea about the Giants' history going into the Ring of Honor?
What was that?
Wasn't he the one that reported that Kadarius Toney didn't really know the Giants' history?
I don't know who did
into the Ring of Honor.
I don't know who did that one, to be honest. There, like I said, he's been right before. So I think the big thing is to see now, like I said, what happens. It's like I said, it's frustrating because it's like, this should have been done a long time ago. This really should have been done a long time ago. But we'll have to see what happens there, because there's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. That's for sure. A lot's going to happen. So I would say it's pretty safe to say at this point, one of two things is going to happen, folks.
Going to go to the deadline.
The next time you see us, Saquon Barkley will either be a long-term New York Giant, at least contract-wise, or the deadline will have passed, and we'll have to talk about where we go from there. And I think, honestly, they should get it done. If I had to place money on him, I would say he's not getting done. He's going to have to play the tag.
I'll bet you $1.
I'd buy that for $1. Good old RoboCop on you. I said, we'll have to see. I've been wrong before, and I'd love to be wrong in this scenario. I will be fully happy to say, thank God I was wrong. And I'm on the fence anyway. So, but like I said, we'll have to see. I think he should, like I said, he should get the money. He should be on like a 3-4 year deal kind of situation. Give him 24, 25 million guaranteed. You're not giving him that much for that third year. You can still cut him and you can cut your losses if you have to. But we'll see what they have. They have a number in mind. They have a plan in mind. We don't know the full picture, so we'll see what happens. But like I said, folks, I have a feeling that we'll be back on Monday with the Saquon Barkley deadline passing episode, but we'll find out. If we don't, we'll have something else for you. We promise you that.
Barkley gone.
We're back again live Monday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Of course, always live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and my LinkedIn profile. Rob's favorite way to watch the show. Of course, available afterwards as well. And of course, available on every audio podcast platform, pretty much known to man. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and all the fun ones over there. That usually go on a couple hours after the live stream that we're doing right now is done. So if you're listening on audio podcast,
you're going back in time.
If I could turn back time,
I would find a way
to take back all the hurtful things that you said. Is that the line? I think.
Sure.
I think it. I'm not really. I'm not really a huge Cher fan.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Something about hurtful things. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway,
find a way to find you.
Anyway, guys, we'll be back on again Monday night. Either way for you guys. And like I said, if Saquon does sign between now and then, guess who you'll see? Me and Rob in our beautiful faces. Oh yes, a bonus episode we'll have then. All right, guys. So again, you want to find out when these things go down. You want to see the new episode when that goes down. You know what you do? Hit the subscribe button. Subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, the bell, whichever option there is on the platform we're using, the liking, whatever you have to do, but hit the subscribe because that's how you find out about new shows coming up.
Ring the gong.
So again, we will see you guys Monday at the latest. Enjoy, have a happy, safe weekend. Go to the beach, soak up some rays. Have some beers. Stay
safe in the thunderstorms we're probably going to get in New Jersey, New York area. Thunderstorms? It's a 50% chance every day.
Wonder what that's like. Wonder what that's like. We're in New Jersey. I mean, in Florida here. I wonder what that's like.
They eat it for 20 minutes.
I know, it's great. And it's over. It's over.
It'll be like 3 days.
All right, guys. Again, we will see you guys here on the flip side. Take it easy, Giant fans. And as always, go G-Man! And to the Hall of Fame.
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support. If you made it this long, you must have enjoyed it. So I am sure you have followed us on all the social media platforms. Of course, you have subscribed to the show on your favorite app as well and given us a top rating. Right? Right? Right?